session. We have, I believe, 2 items on the agenda this evening. However, the first one is removed. Marta is off today for Juneteenth. And so we will go straight to the second item, which I believe is Ms. Echeveria's presentation of state water maintenance overview.
Good evening, Mayor and council members.
Good evening.
Okay. So I'm here to present to you today a presentation on state waters concerning the local, the federal, and the state requirements for stream maintenance.
Much better.
All right. So per the official code of Georgia, state waters includes any and all rivers, streams, creeks, branches, lakes, reservoirs, ponds, and drainage systems, springs, wells, and other bodies of surface or subsurface water, natural or artificial, lying within or forming part of the boundaries of the state, which are not entirely confined and retained completely upon the property of a single individual, partnership, or corporation. That is the official Code of Georgia definition for state waters. And as you see, it's very comprehensive. So they call it state waters because there are no local waters. Typically, any work within the water body is under the direction of the Army Corps of Engineers, and the stream buffers running parallel to the tributaries or creeks are monitored through variances or buffers through Georgia EPD. Go on to the next slide. So the United States Army Corps of Engineer role is again to monitor all activities within a body of water. And in order to obtain a permit to do work in any body of water, you would need a Section 10 permit under the Rivers and Harbors Act of 1899, and also the Section 404 permit, which we typically use because that's associated with the Clean Water Act of 1972. So it regulates any material being placed in the waterway. So riprap, hay, straw, any type of watershed improvement or stream buffer improvement, we would need to get proper permits for that. So the areas immediately adjacent or parallel are called buffers. They aid in wildlife activities for habitat. They reduce the temperature in the water, which will have an impact on our dissolved oxygen. But these areas are immediately adjacent. The 25-foot and the 50-foot is mandated by the state of Georgia. So the 25-foot is for non-trout waters, and the 50-foot is for trout waters. We're too south, so we don't actually have any trout streams, but just know that that is the area immediate to the creek that is protected under the state of Georgia. You can do minor maintenance, but taking down trees, removing roots, they're not allowed. You will need to get a stream buffer variance.
You can't take down a tree.
The roots.
You can take the tree down, but not take out the roots.
The root system, especially if it's on private property, to protect it. Because without the root system, you're going to risk more erosion of the stream bank itself.
So if I have a tree next to a creek and I decide to take down the tree, I can take down the tree, but I can't take down the roots, but then they'll all die.
Yeah, according to EPD, it's minimal. And I always tell people, when in doubt, still call EPD, because I would hate for them to come and pay us a visit and say that we disturbed the state mandated buffer. So each case should be taken individually. I mean, it could be a damaged tree, it could have already fallen, or let's say it's in the creek and it's blocking probably one of our culverts. I would consider that an exemption because it's related to life, health, and safety. So again, each case should be taken on an individual basis.
But if I were to take out a tree, I don't have a creek in my property, but if I were to take out a tree next to the creek and take out the roots, which I'm not supposed to do, Who do they come after? Do they come after me or do they come after the city?
Oh, so typically first they'll contact the city, and the city goes out and does the investigation, and we report our findings back to EPD. That's part of us being a local issuing authority. We're supposed to be able to handle stormwater complaints, erosion complaints, and any issues regarding state mandated buffers, and also the creeks.
So after it's a done deal, and now it's been taken out, what do
I
you
guess
do?
it depends on how much damage. Because again, once you remove the root system, it's going to continually erode, and especially if we have any type of high velocity rain event, it's going to continue to scour away. So
Right.
in that case, it's not going to be a good thing for the water quality, and it'll
Right.
cause major
So
damage.
you're gonna have to, let's just hypothesize, so you're gonna have to come in and put riprap rock next to the side of the creek, or you're gonna have to put mesh in there or something, and that's gonna cost money,
And you need a permit to do that.
and you need a permit to do that, but who would do that, the
The
city? or
property owner.
The
no.
property owner would be, and they'd have to pay for it.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so outside of the state buffers, the city has a 50-foot buffer with an additional 25-foot setback. We can determine what work can be done only in the city buffers, not in the state of Georgia buffers that are immediately adjacent to the tributaries.
Is there a reason our city buffers are, I guess, twice the
Those are,
distances?
yeah, and that's one of the few rules in Georgia where a city government can exceed. The state
Yeah, 'cause
is
normally
buffers.
we can match or less than.
Yeah, but the more in this case is better for the tributary itself and the health of the watershed.
Yeah.
So again, we can't exceed educational requirements. We can't exceed any other things, but those are one of the few things that we can. We can't exceed like NTU when people sample for erosion sedimentation, but we can do buffers. The city can add additional buffers.
Does the city buffer runs parallel with the tributary of the stream?
To the state, it just depends on yeah, but typically it's parallel too. So the picture that I have is just showing you the state, and then the cities would be outside of that limit.
So, Melissa, if I have property, let's say it's maybe built on an old farm originally, and I've got there are 2 or 3 houses on that property, and there's a drainage ditch that runs through that property, it doesn't go anywhere. In other words, it doesn't connect into the stream system, it just kind of opens into a swamp.
Though that, if it's entirely confined to a piece of property and does not go into another piece of property, that would not be considered state waters.
But it doesn't, it does cross several properties. The water crosses several properties, and it ends up in the swamp.
That
The
would be
swamp
state
doesn't
waters.
go anywhere, but the rest of it does.
And it says entirely confined. So once it moves from off of your property profile to another's, it's considered state waters. If it's entirely confined to your
So
property.
even a drainage ditch
Yes.
would be a state water if it crosses 3 properties and ended up in a swamp. All of those properties, including the swamp, would be considered state waters.
Yes, yes.
Okay. That's what I was afraid of.
I got a question, and because it's come up to me before. Water that's coming drainage, and I think it's probably part of the Flint River, and you probably know which one I'm talking about over there next to Zup Park, where it comes underneath Zup Park and goes next to a person's property, and it's slowly eroding the bank, and now a tree that was there is really leaning over. Whose responsibility is that? Is that the property owner's responsibility to build that up so it doesn't take more of his property or their property, or is that?
So again, I like to tell people that we need to treat each case individually, because if we come out there, for instance, and I'm going to discuss this further in the presentation. I mean, we could go out there and that tree could be leaning on one of our structures. And let's say, for instance, it's cracked and it could lead to flooding or some other issues. In cases like that, we probably would cut the tree down. we would cut a tree down, especially if it was leaning on one of my water sewer lines. Do you see what I'm saying? So each case has to be taken individually, and especially if we have to go on a piece of property to repair a water sewer line that has been hit by a tree, it makes no sense in us leaving it there. So part of the repair is not to determine who the tree is, it's to protect the city's infrastructure.
I guess that was my question. We need to come to you.
And we
To
would do
make
a
sure that we-
thorough investigation with photos and pictures, because each case really is treated individually, and we would know that once we do an assessment.
Okay.
Melissa.
Okay, gentlemen, I'd ask, let's let Ms. Echevarria get through the presentation, and then we can
Yeah,
hold our
let's do
questions
that.
till the end.
That's a good idea.
Thank you.
So, next slide, please. Okay, so if state waters exist, are there city waters? And again, I said that no, College Park, as well as other cities, have no legal authority to state waters or federal waters. They're under the direction of Georgia EPD, as well as the Federal Army Corps of Engineers. All material placed in state waters and federal waters must be approved, as well as any type of construction. Working without the necessary permits can result in Clean Water Act violations and penalties for the city of College Park. Exceptions, and there are a lot of exceptions, are repair and maintenance of existing water, sewer, storm infrastructure, or any type of emergency infrastructure work related to life, health, and safety. Next photo. This is a picture of our stormwater network. We have 2,058 structures. Next picture. This is our water distribution network. We have 98 miles of pipe. Next photo. And this is our sewer distribution system. We have 73 miles of pipe. And this is combined, all of the city-owned infrastructure. And this is what I mean by each case has to be taken individually, because I've been doing this for 12 years, and I'm shocked every time I go out there. It's just we have to put a lot of things into consideration when we do have damage, or if the structures themselves are causing damage on private property. All right, so what does the city maintain in creeks, state waters, and or federal waters? The city is responsible for infrastructure in the right-of-way, easements, and city-owned structures in or near creeks or state waters. Each concern should be considered individually, as city infrastructure could be responsible for damage on private property. The city does not work on private property unless an easement exists or if a city-owned infrastructure is in need of emergency repair or failing. Maintenance on private property is the responsibility of the property owner. Okay? I receive, since I've been here 11 months, a lot of complaints. People say, well, you worked on my neighbor's property. And I said, yeah, we probably did. But I assure people that if we did, there was a reason as to why we were there. And sometimes we may have damaged the driveway. We may have to pull up someone's yard. We may have to cut trees. We may have to paint a fence that we had to take down in order to get to the infrastructure. So I tell people, if they have any concerns, I'll be able to explain that to them. So the city owns several miles of infrastructure. If the city worked on private property, it is due for an infrastructure failure or an emergency that impacts life, health, safety. Sometimes these repairs will lead to tree trimming, cutting, and removal and restoration of property that was damaged while the city conducted the emergency repair. If we do not expedite these repairs, this can lead to Clean Water Act violations, especially when it comes to sewer overflows or sewer main breaks that are crossing creeks. Next slide. Okay. So we have a guide for residents regarding city-owned structures. If you believe a city-owned structure is failing or causing damage to a property, please contact the Public Works Department to request an inspection at 404-669-3778, or you can email us at publicworksmanagement@collegeparkga.com. You can also request for a copy of your property profile to view your property boundaries. So in regards to what we can do to assist people with stream cleanups, we have now the Keep College Park Beautiful Advisory Commission, and we can organize community efforts with stream cleanups. And the point of contact is Ms. Frances Kennedy, the Executive Director, and her phone number is 470-303-5163, or residents can contact Keep College Park Beautiful Advisory Commission directly at Keep College Park Beautiful Advisory Commission at collegeparkga.com. So
That is a really long email address.
summary, one more, sorry, there's one more. Okay. Maintenance and emergency repair of city-owned structures that exist within creeks are exempt from state and federal permitting. Additional work, for example, fill material or major work, requires state and federal permits. The city does not own state waters. However, the city does have city-owned structures that exist that we are required to maintain in creeks, tributaries, and within state waters. Each concern or repair needs to be considered individually. And the last thing is, does the city maintain creeks? The answer is no, but it depends on the above information that we provided in this presentation. So when in doubt, please give Public Works a call.
All right, thank you, Ms. Echevarria. Questions, starting with Councilman Clay.
Gee, I think I largely got my questions answered. I guess the only one I could think of is if I have private property and I have a stream going through it and my property is being eroded and you're not going to come and fix it because it's not a threat to life, health, safety, et cetera. Let's just say it's just getting eroded, but it's polluting the stream with dirt. Would I have to fix that, or could I just let it erode away?
You know, I say that if there is, so I always tell people if there is just a single person that's benefiting from that type of work, it would probably be on the property owner. But if there is a stream-based stabilization project that is in a neighborhood, and again, I'm 100% sure we have some structures there, and of course, once the stream bank clears away, it also is, that's the support of the water or sewer line. So in cases like that, again, it's case by case, especially if it's a large area, the city can apply for grants or funding, or we can have funding from the utility to pay for it. It just depends on the scenario and the circumstances and how badly it's eroded. So I've taken part in stream bank stabilization projects that benefited a whole neighborhood.
Right.
Because it may have crossed 6 or 7 properties, and it's damaging, and of course, under weight of gravity, our lines may collapse. So there are ways to do stream-based stabilization.
I can see why you got to look at it case by case, but where I was going was, we have a number of low-income people in the city. People that are on retirement, they're just making their payments. If they happen to have a creek, which some people do, or even a drainage ditch, because we're saying that's effectively a creek, even if it's dry most of the time. And they just don't have the money to pay for it. Is there any penalty to them? In other words, can we put a lien on their property and say, you got to fix your creek, the side of your creek, or we're going to, I don't know, charge you $500?
Now, what you can do, there are some minor repair when it comes to buffers. You can put no more than, I think, 150 linear feet of riprap without getting permission from EPD. But anything greater than that, you would need to apply for a grant variance. So there are some exemptions of what material you can place there, but again, it's very minimal, and it just depends on the length of the stream bank stabilization or the issue with the stream bank.
But let's say this is an elderly person that, for one thing, couldn't do it themselves and didn't have the money to have somebody do it. Is this something that Keep College Park Beautiful could do? That's where I'm hoping
You can. Everything depends on funding. I think it's a good idea, and I've noticed some cities do have a stream bank kind of riprap donation, and what they'll do, they'll buy so many pounds, and once they're out, they'll just put budget in for the next year, and they have a running list. The goal is just to make sure they do not exceed the minimum requirements for putting any riprap material there. And then that, again, we would have to go get permission through EPD.
Yeah, I was just trying to get at whether you could, just like if you don't pay your power bill, you can get your power cut off, or et cetera, et cetera. In this case, is there something that would create a financial hardship for that person because they had to fix the side of their street.
I think it would be a good program. It's just making sure that the procedures and everybody's being treated fair and what our process is and how much money we have aside. We can definitely work with legal and then talk also with the Keep College Park Beautiful Advisory Commission. There are things that we can do to help residents.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Carn?
So if I heard you right, you mentioned 100 and up to 150 feet.
Yeah, no more than that, I believe, is the max that you can put without getting a variance from the state of Georgia.
And that's the private homeowner can do on their property.
Yes.
Gotcha. Couple of questions. Firstly, is there a charge for someone to receive their property profile from the city?
No, I actually go over and beyond when residents call me. I go onto the Fulton County website, I print it out, I've mailed it, I've delivered it by hand to many residents. I've probably done 40 since I've been here.
Okay. And they receive a printout of their plat? Is
Yes.
that basically what
It's
you
not the
send
plat,
them?
just what they have. It's not necessarily plat because doesn't include like any of the easements, but it has a boundary profile to show you where your property starts and ends. And I can always measure from the house itself to the property line, because some people say, well, that's not my property. And when we measure it on GIS, I can tell how many feet.
My
in each
neighbors,
direction.
my neighbors ask about that, actually on both sides at one point or another when somebody was gonna be purchasing the clubhouse townhomes back behind the golf course, and there was a guy out doing the site plans and whatnot, but they had asked for their lines, and they had staked some lines.
Yeah,
They
many of
res-
them leave the metal stakes, but if you've been there so long, they may be
Right.
covered or not exist.
But
That
they
kind of
wanted,
helps.
they wanted to know where we could get an actual plat, and if it included water features at all, if they were in and around the
Yeah.
property as well.
Fulton County has the plats on file, but like I said, I can at least give you your property profile, and I can measure the distance from your physical house
Mm-hmm.
to the property line in either direction, if you were curious as to where your property line started or ended.
All right. One of the big issues I've seen up here over the years has been when a new developer comes in and they put something together and they start breaking ground, and the next thing you know, somewhere downstream, or I guess down elevation, another set of neighbors are getting flooding all of a sudden. This happened with, I think the Lynx, was it Oxford Walk, one of those, and neighbors started getting issues. And at one point, Jackson, I know you probably remember some of this, it was something that was done or not done properly with one of the subdivisions that led to flooding in another neighborhood downhill somewhat. You remember what I'm talking about?
Yes, sir, it was
Yeah.
Oxford
Right.
Walk, but then they put a underground detention pond back there,
Right.
and it leaked off towards
Yeah, there was something there. And we get those individual issues, every now and then as well. I guess what I was thinking about in my mind is there some kind of a precautionary preparation that we could do that may go along the lines of, okay, I was at this had to be an NLC, I guess, years ago, and essentially, I guess, before a major development starts, for instance, if it's adjacent to an established neighborhood, they prepare, and before that project is implemented, before they break ground, the city puts on record the adjacent neighborhood. This neighborhood is going to be getting the brunt of downhill from the new development, for instance, right? So the city or the county would come in and they would put on record, in terms during a significant rain event, put on record some of the pictures of the properties. If they got flooding, if they don't have flooding, and a few yards away is the new development, for instance. You follow what I mean? So that way they have a record of a significant rain event in all of these backyards that abut to the new development. So when ground is broke, they give their mitigation plan and their erosion plan and their drainage plan and their retention plan, and then all of a sudden, if the neighbors in the established neighborhood 6 months down the line start to get flooded out, it's like they have some kind of a recourse with the city where they can say, well, that problem obviously was not here 6 months ago before they broke ground and started land disturbance. In other words, giving our legacy residents just a bit of security in terms of when a new development comes in and they say they got the right retention plan and they say the water runoff's not going to be this and they say it's not going to be that, that way, you know, our residents that have been here are covered on record with the city that says, well, they did not have this flooding in their backyards abutted to this new future development before. You follow what I'm saying? Does that
Yeah.
make sense of putting something in place
Yeah,
like
so
that?
typically that happens during our land disturbance permit process, and we have a stormwater regulations that they're required to treat and not put additional flooding on the downstream property. So that is part of our process. I think some of the issues with the ponds, they're not city-owned ponds, they're owned by the HOA, and sometimes they're not being maintained. If they're full of trash, debris, sofas, and things like that, it won't and it will flood over. So I think that is more of stormwater maintenance issue, not meeting the stormwater regulations that we are required to abide by.
Understood. So if that happens, if an event, whatever type of an event happens, even if it's not the fault of the cities, I guess in one sense or another, I want the residents to be able to come back and say, hey, we have on record with the city that before this development started, we were all okay, and all of our houses abutted to this development had no flooding issues whatsoever. The city came out during significant rain events, and you follow what I'm saying? And it doesn't put us in the liability of it necessarily, but it's just a precautionary protection where here's what, it was fine before now, but because some developers will say, well, you know, Mrs. So-and-so had flooding in her yard all the time before that. And they say, no, we did not. But there's no proof. The land's been disturbed, and it's her word against the developers. So anyway, something to look at. I'm looking at Rockland Homes, and we talked to those guys up there. One of my worries is that that's a heck of an elevation, and that's a lot of land disturbed and a lot of trees cleared and a lot of impervious surface there for water to flow all over the place. And my worry is those 300 houses and that footprint going to be cascading flooding down on my apartments directly below, you know, and all but wash them away. And I think I'm worried about it, you know, and I'm sure they say, oh, we got the great retention ponds, this, that, and the other. Yeah, but the issue that you also have is gravity. It's gravity. So I worry about what they have there, because once those houses go up and then I start getting complaints with apartments flooding, and God forbid, I don't think that'll happen. But what do we have in place? I guess that's my question.
And so the design team who designed that project, they were supposed to provide a hydro report that meets our stormwater regulations that we've adopted, and that's what the plan reviewers are doing here. I can't say, I mean, it depends. I would say now I feel like, we're not saying global warming, but what I'm saying is in terms of storms, I feel like they are more frequent. They're more harsh, and the water just doesn't have time to saturate into the ground.
Well,
They're sized accordingly to meet storms, but I mean, there may be a storm here. If this, let's say, for instance, the city's under flash flood warning, there is no type of infrastructure that can contain a flash flood because that's considered a natural disaster.
Well, of course, I mean, freak of nature kind of things,
Right.
obviously. But this is one of the reasons why we need to fill these positions of city engineer, so that we are looking at this stuff and double checking and checking again before, you know, things go up. But again, that's neither here nor there, but I wanted us to put something else in place. I thought it'd be a good idea, and I'm sure residents would appreciate it. Last thing, how's the Keep College Park beautiful? Are they up and going? Or?
Oh, yes, up and going meeting. We have a lot of things to do, so we're prioritizing. We have a cleanup coming up. We have this Friday, the 24th, we have an event with youth to come and paint and decorate some garbage cans that we can place in each ward. That event is taking place Friday in front of the auditorium. I'll be sure to send you that flyer. We just wrapped it up today, but we've been working in conjunction with the recreation department and a summer youth program.
Okay, and that's good news. I'm glad to see it's going. Only one issue, though. I haven't heard a peep about if they're even having meetings, when they're starting, a meeting schedule, any projects, any initiatives. Literally, and maybe everybody else got it, and I just didn't get anything. But
I can provide a
I've-
summary. I think it's fair enough so that everyone that you elected to be on the board to see that we are working. But we are working. I think we're probably on our 5th or 6th meeting. We have them on Wednesdays at 5 p.m. They've been going well. And like I said, we have a lot of projects underway. Francis has made contact with Fulton County for community service workers so that we can have, during the summer, community services helping her with our litter issues that we're having. And we're going to try to definitely touch on each of the wards.
Okay, it sounds, I'm glad to hear it. I guess I'd like to get an update on what's happening, because I didn't have a clue of any. I guess if I hadn't have asked the question, I wouldn't have known if they had meeting 1 or not, or if there were any initiatives yet, or if you've had meetings, or how many meetings, and what's the projects for the summer. And I guess I want to see that maybe on a workshop or something to see what, I want to know what's going on.
Okay, so the next workshop, I'll have
Yes.
a written kind of summary of what we've accomplished, what we voted on. We have a member chair. We have been working. And like I said, it's just putting a lot of things in just perspective. Right, so right now, we're also trying to come up with a unified logo, because we have inconsistency across the city. We're meeting with vendors to produce something like that. But on the next work session, I can provide you a detailed summary of what we've accomplished and where we're going.
Just so, and I don't want you to try to give the thing here, but and the person we hired, they're working there. Well,
Every day.
I don't think I've met that person yet.
I want to make sure that we have the
Yeah, I just thought
opportunity.
it'd be good to,
Yeah,
have something.
we can do an update. Any other questions about this presentation?
No, that's all I had about this one.
Alrighty, thank you, Councilman Allen.
No, I thank you very much for your presentation, and I think the news that I've come away is we need to make sure that we're checking with you if there's any doubt at all, or if the property owner has any doubt. We need to make sure we check with you, and then we can find out what the regulations are and where they should go, and if it is their property or the city's partly responsible.
And
what
again,
that
if
is.
we
So-
can help or do anything for residents, I'm all for doing it. It's just I'm limited to what I can and can't do. But if there's a means for me to help them, I will help them.
No, thank you very much, appreciate it.
Okay.
Councilman Gay?
Sure, I appreciate that you keeping the conversation going about the streams and creeks and tributary. In Ward 4, I'm speaking on the fact that I probably walked about a third of every creek in my ward over the since late 8 years with several other engineers, more particular William Moore. So I'm kind of familiar with the creeks, but I did learn a little bit from your presentation. Our complaints is in like 4 categories. The first one is the picture you showed us on what does the city maintain? What does the city maintain? That picture is our first complaints we get. Is that, I'm told it's called, was it head wall?
Yeah, it can be head wall,
The
it can
head
be
wall.
outlet control structures,
That's
outlets.
in Ward 4, that's the number 1 complaint. The city keeping the head wall clear of dense vegetation. We see that on Lake Shore. That's the number 1 call I get, and I don't think they're asking us to work on private property. I think they expect us to keep that head wall clear.
It should be, because if it backs up, it can cause some property
Sure.
damage, yes.
The second calls I get a lot is flooding. And I've learned that flooding may not be on the city, but if those stormwater drains have been covered, it could possibly. I've gotten a big problem with that on on Hopewell.
Okay.
They say it's coming from Old National. I mean, we've actually had going out there, Melissa, when it was storms. So, that's the Atkins. And then we get that same complaint from, I think you're aware of this one, on Richard Langford. And I've gotten people have actually sent me pictures where they claim the stormwater has flooded their basements. And they claim that our stormwater basins are not capturing water. And then the third complaint I get that you just clarified is erosion. It sounds like that's not one that we're gonna be able to mitigate for our residents.
We can if there is a structure involved, yes. I mean, but in terms of them, again, if you meet the minimum criteria of maintaining it, you can put some material like riprap, but just don't exceed that 150 feet, because then we have to get permits to do that.
Because even today, I had a meeting in the park with Tangi Warrior and Richard Harvey, and the first thing came up was creeks. First conversation came up was creeks, and they want to know, why did the city restore the creeks on Green Springs, which I was part of that. They feel that their creeks are connected. And I explained to them what you just said, that maybe we don't have city structures, but they do have head walls. So that's something that you might have to educate them.
And then we can come out, and like I said, the best way to deal with this, to give you the straightforward answer, is for us to do an inspection. Because
And
I
just
can't say yes or no, and we come out there and it just doesn't have those factors that'll play
case
in
by
it.
case. And
Yeah.
I just have two more comments. I was told that we maintain a variance maps in the engineer's office. I was called and I was told that in the engineer's office there's the variances that the city maintain that could clarify these questions. Y'all aware of that?
No.
That's what I was told. I was just
No,
said that.
that's,
Well, we might just want to look, that there's a box of maps or variances of these buffers. And the final thing I want to say was, the reason why is because I told a couple residents to go get the plaque, and I was told, hey, there are some variance maps in our engineering office, because apparently this is not a new conversation. I guess creeks been going on our city for a while. And the final thing I wanted to say was, the monies that the residents pay for stormwater fees, can any of that money go to do any of what we can do, any of the exception work, that stormwater fee? that we
That's what
collect?
it does. So the stormwater fee pays for the maintenance, the inspection of our infrastructure. It also pays for our unfunded mandates. We have extensive audits that we have to undergo. I just submitted the one that was due. It's due June 15th. We have to do sampling. It is extensive. It's due every year, and so a lot of the stormwater utility pays for that. It pays for the street sweeper. It pays for the staff that's associated with it. So the money is being utilized in the way that we can use it for. We do infrastructure repairs on flooding. We've done a few this year with stormwater.
And the family on White Cedar Road that your department did come out and look at, they followed up with me, wanted to know, and I think you kind of told me, they don't feel that they were properly given stormwater from East Point, and they would like for us to come back out and discuss what the options are.
Is that something the two of you can follow up on?
Yes,
I mean, this
we-
seems like an individual.
Is that the site that we went to?
Yes.
So that the issue with that area is, I believe we put that on the floodplain mitigation project list.
Okay.
We're gonna probably need some federal funding, but it's difficult when you talk about flooding when we don't have any storm infrastructure on the street. Those projects are gonna cost more money for us to even implement, because it's not like we're trying to capture it and put it in the pipe. There is no pipe to put it to, and we can't put that onto neighboring properties. It has to go to the nearest creek or tributary in a non-erosive kind of form. So all the projects that I listed, again, I'm putting 2 projects per year on a capital improvement list for stormwater. And then we also, when we met with Fulton County, with Chief Wade and Andrea Smalls, we put that on a floodplain mitigation with FEMA to see if we can get some FEMA funds available to us through grant opportunities.
All right, thank you, Ms. Echevarria.
Melissa, I had one other question. Would if someone wanted to, I guess, in their backyard, get a backhoe and rent it, and what is the permitting process if they wanted to dig themselves a pond? Is that even allowed, or?
No, they would have to go through the LDP process with the city. So
LD?
land disturbance permit.
Okay.
Anything, especially dealing with any type of excavators or heavy equipment, I'm sure you need a permit for that.
Now, is that allowed, like a pond? Is that
If it meets
Permitted.
the criteria of engineering and engineering through the LDP process or planning, but they have to get proper permits to do any of that, especially when we're talking about heavy equipment and machinery. And they have to meet the education requirements with the state of Georgia. We're having their proper erosion sedimentation cards as well. So it is a process.
Okay, I was just curious. All right, thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Echevarria. We have some additional items to cover in executive session, so at this time I'll take a motion to enter into re-enter executive session for the
Motion.
purpose. I
Second.
haven't finished, hold on, gentlemen. To enter into executive session for the purposes of real estate litigation, personnel, and cybersecurity.
Motion.
Thank you,
Second.
Councilman Carn. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Councilman Clay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, gentlemen. That is unanimous. We will go into executive session.